I'm the Executive Director of the Southampton Arts Center. On behalf of our board and staff, I'd like to welcome you today. We're so excited that you're here to meet the artists and to hear what they have to say about their work. It's been an honor and a privilege to work with Patton Miller on East End Collected 8. He is the founder of East End Collected, the exhibition, so this is the 8th rendition. So I know there are some new members here. Some of you might have heard this before who've come before, and thank you, Van, for coming back to hear more artists. But do you want to just tell them a little bit about the East End Collected exhibition?
Sure. Forgive me if you've heard this before, but 11, 12 years ago, I was invited to a village resident's house, and when they were deciding what to do with this big building when the parish left for a watermill. And it was an important decision, and they decided that this was indeed the heart and soul of the village. And as I went to park today, I can say that's true. The village looks filled up, which is a nice thing to see. But what happened at that meeting was they were proposing an idea of an art center, and they asked me what I thought. And I said, well, there's a need for it. And if you really work hard to exhibit all the great artists that we have on the East End, you have a good chance that people will love this place. And 2 or 3 months later, they asked me to do the first show, and I did the second one the next year, and well, we've done 8 now. This is number 8. And it continues to be revelatory to me. Some of these artists I've known for a long time, like Ava here. We showed together in Provincetown about 2,000 years ago. Yes. and Bill Albertini I just met, and Stephen Loeb I just met literally tonight, although their work precedes them. So thank you all for coming. Goodbye.
People were asking again, because of course in the past, Patton has chosen all the artists themselves, so people were saying, well, how did this exhibition come about? So having known Patton for a long time, I said, well, let's each come up with a list of artists. We had the list of all the artists that had participated, which was close to 300 artists in the past.
Yeah, we've covered about 300 artists.
So we wanted to have it so that every artist gets to show once in this particular show. So again, we can include other artists. So we each came up with a list of artists, and what was wonderful is that there were artists that Patton knew, and again, artists that I knew. And then, so we were able to exchange, and artists that, I learned something new, Patton learned something new. So for us, that's always very exciting, and it's a testament to the art community that we're living in today. So I really think that's fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off asking the artists to talk for about 5 minutes about their work, about their experiences, how they got into the art world, and then we're going to do a little conversation. It's going to be lighthearted, and we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So, Bill, can we pick on you to be the first since you're right next to me?
Okay.
I'm going to ask the artists to really speak close to the microphone because we are taping this, and we'd really like everyone to hear you.
Yeah, okay. This series is called Pipe Dream System. I've been working on it since 2017. It's a modular system where I use an engineering program to come up with individual components. It's kind of like a self-created exquisite corpse where the only rule is that one part has to be able to connect to another part, but I don't come up with an idea of how to assemble it into a finished sculpture until I have approximately 100, 200 pieces. So I have a kind of a box of pieces, then I start playing around with it. Most of the works I've created this way have been suspended from the ceiling or kind of coming out from the wall. This is one of the first kind of freestanding. I've made 3 like this. And interestingly, I was working on a bunch of table lamps. And so I had done these experimental bases that were for something else, but I readapted them for this. These 2 are kind of the opposite. This is additive process of 3D printing, so it builds up. Whereas this piece is carved out of, carved using a 3D, 7-axis robot out of a solid block of poplar. Let's see, that's kind of pretty much kind of encapsulates what this is. I've been making sculpture since the mid-70s, and for a long time, I was doing constructions. I mean, most of my stuff is constructed. Then in the early 90s, I was doing this series of pieces where I was using Xerox machines, and someone said, well, why don't you get a computer? It never occurred to me that what you're doing with Xerox machines would be much faster if you happen to use a computer. So I kind of dug around, did some research, ended up getting an early Macintosh. And at that point, I was down the rabbit hole. However, there really wasn't a way in those days to output 3D objects. So for many years, I was doing virtual work, almost like large photographs that were created on the computer and of virtual environments with things going on in them, but they were flat. And then about 2010, 2011, I discovered that there were, in fact, 3D printers, and I started doing research on that, ended up building some of my own, and I was able to start making stuff again. So that's kind of pretty much encapsulates it.
Hey, Bill, what did your parents say when you said you wanted to be an artist?
Well, actually, my dad did go to art school, so.
Okay, so
But he didn't like the idea.
He knew.
He knew.
Yeah.
Bill, you had a show just recently at Glenn Hansen's gallery on the
Correct.
North Fork, and your work encompassed the whole gallery.
That's right.
So was that the largest three-dimensional sculpture that you had done?
No, I've done much larger outdoor things, but many years ago. But this was like probably the largest of the 3D printed pieces. And funny enough, it's traveling to London right now.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, hopefully.
Terrific,
for a
terrific.
show in April. So.
Were you familiar with Nancy Holt's work?
Yeah.
As well?
Yes.
Great. I had done a show with Nancy Holt at
Oh, you did?
Guildhall where it encompassed the whole gallery and went out, well, it's pretended
No,
to go
she
out
was
through the
great.
door.
Yeah.
And again, when I saw your work, again, I had the wonderful feeling that there was sort of a synergy.
There was
that yours is
recently a
quite
big
different.
show of hers at Lismore Castle Arts.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
I grew up very close to there, so I kind of follow what they do.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
This is my turn?
Yes.
Well, I have the three.
I think you have to.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eva Faye.
Eva Faye is
Eva Faye.
actually how
I'm
you
sorry, I'm
pronounce
sorry.
it. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that, so, yeah. Well, I have the three blue paintings in the other room, and they started out with a series of work that I showed at, in Trondheim in Norway about a year and a half ago. I was invited to show in an art foundation, and I realized that I had a full wall, actually the length of the wall where my paintings are hanging now, and I decided to make a whole new series for that show. I work a lot with color. I work on linen or on wood, and I had done a couple of blue paintings from another series when I worked sort of nature-based, organic, with patterns, and I had ultramarine blue in it quite often. And then I decided, I made a very blue painting, like why don't I just concentrate on that radiant color and experiment it. And for the installation, I realized I could hang it all together. So I had like 20 pieces in different sizes, from like 12 by 12 to 80 by 70 was the biggest painting. And it was an experiment working with that color, and to me it's a very special color. It's, I mean, ultramarine has a long history from lapis lazuli, stone. Painters in the medieval ages and in the Renaissance used it, and it used to be more expensive than gold. And it became synthetically made in the early 1900s, And now it's not an expensive color, but I've always been fascinated with light as color, and this color has so much light in itself. And the more I worked on these paintings in my small studio, my whole studio started building on this color, and it was almost like magic. So that's how that series came about. And when I do paint, I make my own organic patterns. I cut out vellum, and I paint, I pour paint, I paint in layers, and I incorporate, I incorporated the patterns into the paintings. And after I had worked for almost 10 years working solely on vellum, so the vellum works traveled into the paintings again. And I don't know, that's about it, I think, or less.
I'm curious, we've known each other for 40 plus years.
Yes.
And you've always been an artist.
Yes.
But what was it like when you were younger? Were you a dedicated artist at a young age?
Well, I was always drawing and painting when I was younger, and I think my parents recognized that was my strength. You know, I could do that, and that was my interest. And my father didn't really want me to become an artist, or if I was going to become an artist, I should become a commercial artist, because he was worried I wouldn't make money. But my mother, who actually sang in the Norwegian opera, she was much more into you should use your talents, go abroad, go to a school in America. She had been to America herself, and she kind of gave me a push to do that. So.
Did you come to America?
Yes.
To study?
But first in Paris. I lived in Paris for 4 years.
Ah.
And I started art school there, and then I finished art school here at Parsons, and then I went to Hunter for my master's. And yeah.
Thank you.
Stephen Laubnix.
Well, sorry?
Stephen Laub.
Oh, Stephen Lau. See, it's always hard to know where to begin. Let's see. I guess in my themes of my work, my family has always been a major influence, maybe because they were immigrants to America in the 1940s, early 1940s, and their past has always haunted me in various ways. So history and my family's history have been kind of in the back of my mind and sometimes in the front of my mind. And I've done many different kinds of work, performance, video, sculpture, drawing. But the pieces in this exhibit are based on paper. Like, the series is called Works on Paper, but I mean it in a double sense. It's about documents that have had a really important influence on people's lives, sometimes death, and like maybe a death certificate or a birth certificate or a marriage certificate. So I've done about 15 works, and there are 3 here in the gallery. So it started out many years ago with a document, again, historical document called Peace for Our Time. And it was Neville Chamberlain meeting with Hitler, and he signed a document that the Munich Agreement, where they would be at peace between England and Germany. And it just always was amazing to me what importance was on a piece of paper. Just because someone signed that document, it was as if that was a truth, or that was an ironclad agreement. But of course it was worthless. Germany invaded Poland not long after. And, but anyway, that kind of haunted me, that idea of paper having such an outsized influence. So there are many different documents that it was like a portrait. Actually, my work is kind of like a portrait about a piece of paper. And the works in this show, the one on the right is the Non-Proliferation Treaty from 1970, about agreeing that we would no longer have, nuclear arms in the world, and we know how that's gone. And then the middle one is the Daily Mirror, which is about a newspaper and the importance or, the effect of newspaper and its value on public interest and public opinion. And then the other piece is a kind of an underexposed portrait of actually my father, and it's kind of like a photograph can be also kind of valued or not valued document. And another aspect of the paper is they're crumpled, and to me it's like works on paper is also about a rough draft, that you have an idea, but it's like a treaty, like the treaty between the colonists and the indigenous Americans. Like you write something out, and it's kind of a rough draft that we'll have an agreement here, but it's really, again, it just works on paper. It doesn't mean that it actually will happen, and most of those agreements, of course, we know that none of them worked out for the indigenous Americans. And the way I make the pieces is they're made out of a very thin veneer that's glued to foam core. And the reason I did that is because it's very light and I can manipulate it a little more easily than if it was solid wood. And making the pieces has always been a challenge to me, but I always like trying to make things that I can't make. So it's a little like making a puzzle while you're making the puzzle. I make a shape and then I have to fit another shape into that shape, and then a third and a fourth and a fifth. So it takes quite a while, but there's something very stimulating about trying to figure something out while I'm working. I don't know if that's enough said about that.
That's great. Stephen, you have a piece in an exhibition in the city. Can you tell us a little bit about that piece? And it's a little bit different from a different series.
Yeah, that was a series, again, history-based. That was 1989. That piece is called Cloud, and I did a whole many works around that time where I found a photograph, and then I found that inside the photograph was a shape or an object that it's kind of like, for me, photography has been a very, like a portal. It's something that maybe because of my past, it's how I understood history, is looking at a photograph. But it was also not looking at a photograph, but almost going into the picture to find something. And these objects there was something in the photograph that I made as a large object that frames the actual picture. And this piece is called, it's very difficult to describe because you haven't seen it. It's based on Americans' involvement in Vietnam, and it was, I guess it was napalm bombing of an area. And so the piece is a very large shape of a cloud, but the photograph, like I said, is a helicopter in Vietnam. So there's a tension between the photograph and the object. They're not the same, but they're connected. And the photograph is extremely small. It's about 1 by 2 inches, and the object is very large. It's like 3 or 4 feet long. And to me, the importance is the reverse. The photograph is almost the most important thing, and the object is like a lure to get the audience to come up to the photograph. And again, the photograph is small, but it's like I always think of it like an hourglass where you have something large and it goes small and it gets large again. And it's the same thing like a photograph. You're in this space and you enter into that space, and then that becomes large again. If you can empathize or you're curious about what's in the photograph, it kind of opens up into a time and place. I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
You have to go see the work. You have to see it in person. Great, thank you. Joyce Kubat is next.
This isn't easy for me. This isn't easy for me. I can talk one-on-one and one-on-two, but to a group, I'm very shy. And this is my work over here, the 4 drawings of people. I was born and raised in Michigan, the Upper Peninsula. I went to the University of Michigan, Michigan State University, and I have a degree in psychology. And then I went to graduate school, and in my graduate year, my first year, I took a freshman art course, and I fell in love with art, dropped out of school, got my way to New York, lived at the YWCA until I got a job because I could type and take shorthand and I could make money. And I went to the Art Students League for a long time. And I never took academic realism. I took teachers and classes where it was more free and not portraits. And when that ended, I ended up at in Long Island, and I'm sorry, I'm nervous, but I started monitoring life drawing classes, and I didn't have to pay that way, so I monitored the classes for 25 to 30 years. So I have, one class was at the Nassau County Museum of Art, the other class was at the Art League of Huntington, and for 30 years, 2 days a week, morning and afternoon, I had models. And I just did it for years and years and years, and this is 20 years ago, this is the very beginning of no more instruction, no more people, no more anything, but I was comfortable with drawing from the nude model. And from here, these are 40 inches wide. I put two together. I had 80-inch wide. I have about 50 at home, 80-inch wide. I have another 40 of these at home. And I've gone on and on. Each group grew into something else, and it became something else, and it became something else. So I have years of work. I'm only comfortable if I can read what I wrote up there, if no one minds.
Of course, no. Just be close to the microphone, Joyce.
My breakthrough work began in 2002 with this group. No more teachers, no more influence. It was time to play. I was fortunate to monitor nude model workshops for years so I could develop as I did using uncontrollable ink, hard pastels, and paper that took unbelievable abuse. I completely wet the sheet of paper and worked from the nude model with compressed pastel, which when wet is very intense, thick, spontaneous, uncontrollable, and sensuous. I could not be clean or accurate, but I could wash out and put in new heads and figures as often as needed until something unexpected happened. By this process, a world peopled with unusual characters emerged. I discovered a form of psychological realism, a commentary on the human condition and interrelationships. It's the psychological aspect that interests me, and I believe the viewer responds to. It sucks them in and keeps them there, sometimes uncomfortably so. That's it.
Thank you. I think it's very exciting. I know that when people come in and they're looking at the works, again, the psychological tension and the relationships between all of your figures is something that everyone is constantly talking about, and it comes through so strongly in your work.
Thank you. And I have Christina to thank. I started the Guildhall Members Show in 2000. So every single year I would make the trip from Huntington or wherever I was living out here back and forth.
Wow.
And I loved it. I loved it.
You started,
Joyce also won.
showing that?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. You didn't start it, you started showing that in that year. Well, you two started it.
She was in the member show yearly, and then she won Best in Show.
Oh, okay.
And she had a one-person show.
Okay, I got it now, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I did win, thank the heavens, top honors one year, and I had a beautiful show which had this, one of the things was this show, the bigger, the 80-inch ones. And then I showed things on acetate where they're a little scarier. And ultimately, I'm doing skulls, and I love it all. And men like my skulls, women like this. That's it. I'm just, that young man back there told me not to be afraid to be afraid, basically.
Oh, right. Yeah, they always say that.
Next is Robert Harms. Robert also was a little nervous about me being here. I've known
but
Robert the
I try
longest.
to hide it with different things. I don't know how it works sometimes. This close enough? Yes.
Very good.
So I'm Robert Harms, the other nervous person, and my paintings are the two paintings as you enter the second room after you come in. On the right, next to Ava's beautiful blue paintings, which I was very happy to be next to. And they're part of my long life of paintings that were largely influenced by landscapes that I either remember or that I've studied or seen, or it's not like I'm a landscape painter doing the seashore and the clouds. Not that I have anything against that, but that's not what I do. It's sort of it's really like kind of memory and feeling as much as looking. But I also do really study it, what it is. That's an inspiration. Like the first one's called, I think, Liriope. It's some plant that grows, and it just every year grows in front of outside my window. I live on a pond, so I've got like a lot of material from that, the vegetation and the water. And so that thing just comes out, like they were throwing it out, so I took it and I planted it, and it comes up every year, and it's this beautiful lavender color. And so, I mean, in this way, it even goes back to the person who gave me the plant as part of the painting. It's like the experience of like just being alive and looking at things and translating it to paint and marks, and they go from abstract to less abstract to more abstract and back and forth. And I've been out here looking at this landscape for a really long time. So but I moved from, I guess, Amagansett to Southampton about 25 years ago. So that was a big shift to be living on the pond, which is like it's a small house and studio, so it's all in one place. Like I can't get away from my paintings. So, and the window, there's all like windows on one side, and it all looks, it's as if the house is in the pond practically. So that influences it a lot too. Water has always influenced my paintings. When I first came out here, I worked for an artist, a man who was a local artist out here. He's not no longer alive, but his house was right on Gardiner's Bay. So I studied the water there too. So the work is really just from studying nature and me interpreting it through paint and feeling. I don't have, it's traditional in that sense, And then I try to change it. There was a period when I started, they were much thicker. And like when I went to the School of Visual Arts, and I came from Nassau County, and suddenly I was in the city, and I was learning, all these things I didn't know. And I saw, Jackson Pollock and de Kooning, and I just fell in love with them. So they were a big influence when I was like, 18, 20 years old. And then for, I'd say, another decade or two at least, they were thicker. And the paint was thick, and they were more sort of like performative or action. In the last, like I'd say, at least 10 years, they've become more calibrated and thought out than just the movement. So that's them. You really have to look at them. I think one of the reasons I started painting is because I don't like talking. I hate to say that, but that's why I don't talk that much. So I talk to my cat or dog, whichever I have. So like, it's nice to paint. And I talk to them. I'm not there. I'm not trying to be funny. They talk back to you. you know, they tell you what to do next sometimes. They really do. I think that happens to writers too, you know. Like, once you're into it, it'll start to tell you what to do next.
I think that, you know, when you were looking at these paintings here, I know that when they came in and Pat and I were talking about that, we said there was a real ethereal quality to
Yeah,
them.
that's a new word in the last 4 years, but it's like keeps coming up. I'm like, oh shit, I'm ethereal now. Like, am I a ghost or I don't know.
But there's a wonderful quality to it. When you're looking at them, almost like even you absorb nature, there's a spiritual entity to
That's,
it.
I was thinking
People
about it
standing
last
next to
night, yeah. I thought it was different, a transformation. They've become meditative, in a sense, rather than performative, you know? Like where the viewer actually brings as much as like to the painting as like I do, you know? Each person sees it differently, I think.
That's a very good point, and I think that's a point that we can think about with everyone's work. I know that I was drawn immediately to your work, Ava, because of the color. The color, as you were talking about, it was something that I was naturally colored that I'm drawn to. I loved it. I loved the depth of it. Some of the earlier work with the vellum and the vinyl that you've done, again, penetrates almost through the wall to get it. So there was an energy that was pulling us back and forth. Stephen, I showed his work early on at Guildhall, and you had these amazing hats that had gold leaf on them, and there was an energy to it as well with the little photographs embedded. Again, all wonderful things. So again, that energy really draws you into so many different things, the psychological, the overwhelming, the 3D quality of your work, Bill. Again, it's just wonderful. I think that I want to see it in the whole space here. Filled up.
Love to. I've known Robert for over 40 years as well.
Yeah, I mean, you were here, and you were near I was thinking that last night. You were at Fairfields.
Yeah.
And Henry was living there, and I mean, we've been through a lot of history out here.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about being an artist here is that you're not the lone kook.
Right, yeah, you run into other kooks.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of kooks. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for all your friendship and all the decades of...
Oh, thanks, Pat. It's
yeah.
been good to know you. You were one of the first artists. Henry had one of you, had at least one of your paintings hanging in his house when I came out here.
Yeah.
And you were close by.
Henry, you all know Henry Gelsler.
I know, I'm saying Henry
yeah.
like...
He was. That's one of the reasons why we do these shows, is because it's a community, and you're all here, and I thank you again for coming. Goodbye. I thought I'd run that joke up the pole one more time.
Can we talk a little bit about the energy here? Again, we've talked about this before in other times. The community of artists that are here, is that what drew you to the East End? Is that what keeps you on the East End? Do you feel that it is a supportive environment? And how has the environment changed for artists out here? Robert, you've probably been here the longest. How do you feel that it's changed to what it is now? I'd love to hear from everybody on that.
The artist community, how that's changed?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say there's, you know, like everything else out here, there's more, there's like more artists. It was smaller. And I actually got to know a lot of the people from the 50s and the 60s, like Howard Kanovitz and Larry Rivers, and because I worked for Howard. So, and they all hung out together. I don't want to say this, but it seemed less about like trying to be the best artist. They were friends, you know, and they were hanging out, and they'd go and they'd play their trombone and strings and wolfies, and I don't know that happens as much out here. Maybe I just don't see it.
You're just not getting out much.
Yeah, I gotta get out of the house.
It's true. Robert's a bit of a recluse. And
I'm getting more.
I hear people saying, "I saw Robert Harms walking his dog on Little Fresh Pond Road." And I said, "Really? Were you sure it was Robert?"
It sort of works to your favor being a recluse, and that's like seeing you is like a.
Yeah, everybody's glad to see you.
Yeah. It's like a surprise. But I don't know how else it's changed. There's more artists, yeah, but still, if you find the right people, there's still artists that you can connect with.
Yeah, I think so. I think the really hard part here is the real estate issue.
Yeah, like
when I first came here, you mentioned Fairfield Porter Studio. I literally knocked on their door and said, "Can I use it?"
Right, that's kind of how I found a place. I got in Springs. It was like a little place by the Green River Cemetery. And I just asked some guy, he had a little converted chicken coop. I think it's a lot harder to find, for a young artist to find a...
Now they release the hounds.
Yeah, exactly, to get through the gate, yeah.
Anybody else want to talk about their perception of the area and how it's changed?
It's definitely changed for us because we started to come out in the mid-'80s, just renting and living only in the city. And then we rented year-round in Bridgehampton, and now we're there permanently for the last 8 years. No, 7 years. But in the beginning, we didn't know any artist out here. You know, we knew artists in the city. And one of the first ones, I think, that I met was you. And I remember we went to your studio, Fairfield Porter's studio. It's probably in the 80s, I think. You were working there then, right?
I was there for 23 years.
Yeah, which was so exciting to see, because seeing you working there and being in that studio. And living out here has been great anyway, because there's such an active art community out here when you're here full time. And I'm still amazed, like I'm still running into artists I've never met that's been living here. A really great artist, and it keeps happening all the time. So it just shows what a huge art community that you have here.
This show is a case in point.
Yes? Mm.
Like Stephen, I've never met before. I actually met Stephen today, but his work precedes him. And Bill, the same. We met at the opening.
Yeah.
But I knew your work. Yeah. We were out west after the opening. We took a vacation, went out to the Southwest, and everywhere I went, I saw Bill Albertini trees. That's the mark of a great artist. So I was walking down a street in Manhattan once, and I was with an art historian, and I looked up and I said, "That's a view from Toledo by Goya, the sky." And he thought that was a nice way of approaching art history.
Yeah.
Bill, you're on the North Fork. Do you want to tell us
That's
a little
right.
bit about what's happening there? Because I feel that the community out there is really garnering together and doing a lot as well.
When we're relative newbies out on the East End, so, I mean, we've been coming out here forever, but we got a place 15 years ago up there, and it was quite a bit different then. There weren't nearly as many artists, but admittedly, you know, we'd come out in the summer and I wasn't really kind of engaged in what was going on. But starting around COVID time, you know, we started being out much more often, and we're pretty well out here full time now. And certainly over the last 10 years, a lot of people that I know from the city have either moved out there or I've, you know, got to know, and it's quite active right now. You know, I mean, people like Sarah Z's up there, and in Mattatuck. We're in Mattatuck, and Sean Landers recently got a place very close to us, and I mean, that's just two people, but there's tons more. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that we're very lucky to be in a community where there's so many different opportunities. Earlier we were talking about the church in Sag Harbor, Guildhall, the parish, the Watermill Center. When you think about it, there's just so much going on, and activities, you know, lectures, talks, opportunities to meet other artists, residency programs. And I think the art world really has changed. I know from my time out here, really has enlarged, and really greater opportunities to be engaged on so many different levels.
Yeah.
So that's very, very exciting. Any other question for you?
No?
No? Okay.
Everyone's been very articulate. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to ask the questions. If there anyone in the audience? If anyone from the audience has a question for any of the artists, please do. Roisin?
Well, thank you, Christina, and especially the artists. And first of all, what a great
It definitely works.
very fully done. And yeah, no, I really want to thank the artists because I know it's a special kind of torture for artists to speak about their work, especially because, you know, there's a lot of history. And yeah, it was great to hear and see everyone. Like Robert, I only really know mostly from Instagram.
I have a big life on Instagram. But you know what I find? You can also see, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you can also see older paintings, and like it's instead of going to the library, if you think of an artist, you can just get them on your phone now. It's kind of amazing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's great. And I've seen some at art shows, and I always say, like, where is he? Is he here? And he doesn't always. And I actually have a question. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to ask one of Ava, and it's about that, like, that color, that ultramarine. Because the first time I saw it, it was images from that show in Norway. And I instantly felt like Ava, Norway, like that color just makes so much sense. It feels very elemental, like related to the elements like the sky or like deep inside the snow. And I'm just wondering if there was like a moment when that color kind of like lit up for you. Like was it in your childhood or just from the work itself, just like using the color?
That's interesting you say that, because I feel I've never concentrated on ultramarine like this before ever, but I think I always like blue tones and blue color in my work, and it comes easily to me. So when you say the snow, very often there's bluish, and I mean I lived close to the fjords and the sky and the dark in the winter. I also feel, it's hard to say, but when you say this work is inspired by the elements, it really is, but it has also a lot to do with living out here. Because we walk the ocean, the sky, the starry sky, and the elements much more like than earth in a way, in that work. But it also could come from my background. But ultramarine in this sense has been sort of a new discovery for me.
Lana? That's a good question. Lana said, do you have a criteria when choosing the artist? So,
I love the fact that it's ad hoc. It covers a gamut of seeing exhibitions, being introduced to people, suggestions. It really runs the gamut. And that's something I like about it. The randomness comes out with something very specific. And that's something I like very much.
I would say that's true, but I think that we also felt that it all had to be of a certain caliber of artist. As we began talking about artists and reviewing our list, we did exclude certain artists, and we, from each of our lists, we went over them, and we felt that this group of artists, we felt they were all on that wonderful highest level. You can't mix apples and oranges. You really have to have all of the same. And I feel the caliber of all of the work in this exhibition is unique and wonderful, and I think that's why it hangs together so well. So that, I must admit, was something that we made sure, and we dialogued about each of the artists, in discussion. The artists themselves, and then picking the work became something, we had asked the artists to give us images, and we chose from those images, but there was a dialogue on each of the pieces that was chosen.
It's a lot of,
They're all apples and oranges in terms of the variety of the work, but we felt that it was all of the same caliber, that it was of the highest caliber. And they're all nice and ripe, absolutely. That the caliber was all, again, we didn't have artists who we felt like were just starting, well, not even necessarily they were just starting art, but even if they were starting out, they were all really had achieved a certain level.
And do you tend to exhibit artists who have been working for quite some time rather than the very young ones?
In this show, we
Sam's
have,
work.
Sam is probably the youngest, and
What about the
Georgia.
two women that are on either side of the ramp? They seem...
Georgia was young.
And I
Georgia
like-
Suter.
And then the small landscape painting, that
Carly,
woman.
Carly.
Yeah.
I love
So
that
they're-
work.
they-
But Carly's been working for about 25 years or
Oh, okay.
so.
It's younger than, well, not younger than 25.
But,
I love her paintings. I
I
like the other ones too.
and I urge you all to look in the corner here. This is Sam's work.
Sam Havens, yes, actually.
And he is in his mid-20s
Probably master printer at the church.
at the church, and he's a real find for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think those are the three youngest that we have in the show, but I think we felt that each one, probably the younger, but that, again, Carly has been working for a number of years. Georgia and Sam are probably the youngest. We felt that the caliber of their work really stood out.
And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have Bill.
No, the oldest artist that we have is right behind, right next to where Taylor is, who's in his early 80s. So we're really very excited. That's John Philip Capello, who's been working for a number of years.
I think the show requires, the opening was great. We had 600 plus people. But to really see this show, I think you come back when there's no one here. Or when there's few people here. It's a whole different experience. Because you might miss Sam's work.
Right.
Or you might walk by John's.
Right.
You're not going to walk by the ladder. But you know what I mean. It's worth inspecting it.
Diane, do you have a question?
Well, it is an interesting color because I see it as a deep color, but it's radiant, it's melancholic, it has a lot of different connotation to it when you look at it. I love the fact that there's so much light in something that's not, well, it's bright in a way, but it has a light like no other light in a sense. And I know working with color and light, of course, many other color has something of a lot of that too, of course. But in this particular moment, working with that color and putting down a layer and seeing it the next day, and sometimes it would darken a lot more than I thought, and all of a sudden it would just come alive. And I didn't really have any control over that. So I felt like the painting was still working during the night when I was asleep, and I'll come the next day and see. And so there's a little bit of magic involved, I feel, in that color. So.
Magic in the color and magic in all the art that is here. I want to say that. We want to remind everyone that works are for sale if anyone is interested. There are price lists at the front desk. Work can also be purchased online if you're interested. We are going to be having another talk on the 29th and then on the next one, the last one in April. So we encourage you to come back and hear all of the artists speak. I think it's a great opportunity to meet the artists if you don't know them, to ask a question when you do know them. Is there anyone else? Any other? Sorry?
Is there a way that one can somehow stimulate and encourage people to acquire more of these wonderful artworks, not just doing exhibitions that you see? Instead of buying a new car or something, how about buying a work of art in the home? How to go about encouraging people to acquire art? That's something important in their life.
That's a very good question.
I was thinking of a big neon sign that says, buy this. No, you know, one of the problems is that a lot of people think of this as a museum.
Yes.
They think of this as a museum. They don't know that, I think they think, well, can you go and you can't buy works from a museum.
How many people realize that you could buy things in the show? We are in the show?
Well, you're a very informed group, too.
Absolutely.
That's a tough,
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
We do have signage out. We don't want to overwhelm the exhibition itself, but I think you're absolutely right. Supporting artists on every level, and purchasing original artwork. Don't go to TJ Maxx and buy something that is a pretend art piece. Buy real art. Support these artists. These artists need to make a living. Most artists do not survive just on their art. They have to teach. They have to work another job. So it really is important to purchase to support artists. I have to say that many artists I know are even willing to take work, sell work to you on a payment plan because they would love to see the work in someone's home and to have see someone enjoy it. It's such an important thing and something that you'll never regret. I mean, pieces that you have in your home and you live with on a day-to-day basis are something that become part of you, become part of your family. I know when my children were little, I remember saying that I was going to change something, and my daughter was like, "No, this is a permanent installation." I was like, "You're a little kid. Why do you think this is a permanent installation?" But I was like, because she had heard that me talking about it. But again, she was so used to seeing this piece, and she didn't want to see that piece move to another location because it meant so much to her. So these are important things. But Lana, I think you're absolutely right. Supporting local artists is important. Supporting local art institutions. I'm going to give my plug here because supporting local art institutions allows us to do an exhibition like this and again to generate information and expose artists to our community. So we really do It's all very important, the whole process. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the artists. Thank you to the artists who are in the show, who are here as well today. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Beautiful work.
I enjoyed what you
Yeah, it's striking.